Greetings, fellow Xaphoonists. Today we're going to talk about some common problems you might have playing the Xaphoon. So we're going to put it into 5 different categories. There's your air, which is most likely the problem. There's your embouchure, which is how we set our face, the reed, your fingers, or the instrument itself, which is less likely. So starting with air, your air we can put into 2 categories. There's the quantity of your air, so how much we're using, and then the quality of your air, so how good the stream of air coming out of you is. So quantity isn't super important with this. I mean, it is, but not as important because it's not that big, right? So we don't need a ton of air to fill this up. But we just want to make sure if we're playing sitting or standing up that we are up nice and tall. And as we blow, we're pushing with your diaphragm and we're breathing down deep. So a good way to check that you're breathing deep is stick your hand up to your face like so, and when you breathe in, it should be almost silent like that, right? If you're breathing into your chest, which we don't want to do, you're going to hear something like this. Right, it's going to be loud and noisy, and you'll feel the difference. So breathe deep. That's a good way to test. So quality of air, which we're going to talk more about, is our air stream. So we want cool, fast air blowing into the instrument. So a good way to check that is also with your hand. We're going to put it right in front of your face, and we're going to do 2 versions. There's going to be the warm puff of air, which just goes like you're going to fog up a window, right? So that should feel warm, and it should just feel like a little puff of air against your hand. Now, what we want to do is the opposite. We want fast, cool air. So pretend like you're blowing through a straw. You can aim it right at your palm, and you'll feel it feels much cooler, and you should feel it actually like hitting a point on your hand if you're narrowing in that stream and kind of aiming with it, right? So as we blow into this, we're blowing a stream of air right down the tube. So here's the difference. So here's the warm air. All right, sounds lovely. And then here's the fast, cool air. So I didn't actually change the quantity of air I was using there. I just changed the quality of it, and you get a big difference. So that's a good way to check. If you're using that warm air, you're going to get lightheaded. You're going to run out of air real quick. It's not going to sound good. Okay, so your embouchure is how we set our face. If you're new to playing a reed instrument in general, you're going to notice there's some muscles here in the side of your face that'll get a little sore because you don't really use them that much outside of doing this. So that's one thing to think about is you got to play a bit to strengthen up those muscles so we're comfortable playing, right? A couple things to watch out for that might be issues is your bottom lip, of course, goes over your teeth. So we can put our reed on it, right? If you don't have that covered and your teeth are touching, you're going to get all this crazy harmonic noise. Or it's just going to squeak really high and loud. So that's an easy to fix. Just make sure you're covering your teeth. The other thing that's less easy to fix is the tightness of your embouchure. We got to find the happy medium. So there's tight, which we don't want, and there's loose, which we're going to gear more towards loose, but not too loose. So as I said, there's a little in-between we got to find. So a good way to check this is thinking some vowel sounds. So tight goes with E. So if we're saying E, we smile, things tighten up, right? And if we say O, which is what we want to do, that's to loosen up. So here's the difference. So here's E. So here, sometimes the air is having a hard time getting through the instrument because I'm so tight. So now I'm going to think O, O. Now the air gets through nice and freely. So if you're feeling like the air is just not getting through the instrument, chances are you're too tight. So loosen up, think the sound O, and that also helps open up your throat, right? So if we are constricted, then the air's not getting through and we can't have that nice stream of air as well. So everything kind of ties in with each other. So anyway, moving on to the reed, this thing. So of course this was makes the Xaphoon work, so it's got to be in working condition. So first things first is the placement. So we got to make sure the tip of the reed lines up right with the top of the Xaphoon's mouthpiece here. If it's not lined up nicely, it'll probably still work, but it'll be a lot harder, right? So if it's too high up, then it gets really stuffy sounding. It gets a lot harder to play. It's like you went from a 2 reed to a 4, and it gets way stiffer. And then also if it's too low, then it has a hard time vibrating against the mouthpiece, so it just also makes it very hard to play. It will probably still work, but if you're having issues, always check that you got it lined up nicely. The strength of your reed also matters. So especially for a beginner, you want something on the softer end of the spectrum. So I mentioned like the 2 to 4. So 2 is softer, and that's more where you want to start. As it goes up higher, the stiffer the reed gets, which makes it harder to play. You got to have stronger muscles in your face. You got to have more control and quantity of air to make it work. So if you're starting and you have a 4, well, don't do that, okay? Because you're going to blow and nothing's going to happen because the reed's too stiff. Okay, there's different types of reeds too you can check out. So there's the regular cane ones, which you might as well use these. But there are some plastic variations. So here is a synthetic reed, which is just entirely plastic. They last a long time. And you can kind of leave them on your instrument if you want. That's what I do for this thing a lot of times because I don't play it that frequently compared to my other instruments. And then Rico came out with these, the plastic covers. So you'll see there's still made of cane, but now it's also like dipped in plastic. And it kind of gives you an in-between of those two worlds. So those are fun to check out if you want. If not, just go with some regular cane reeds. Okay, and then the other thing about reeds is they get old, they wear out, the fibers get soft, and they can chip, they can split. So they just fall apart eventually if you've been using them. And, oh yeah, they can mold too, so be careful. And yeah, when it gets to that point, you just gotta get rid of them. Don't hang on to them. Don't save them for later. Just throw them in the garbage. All right, and then your fingers, thing number 4. We just gotta make sure we're covering the holes, right? So flat fingers is what we want. So don't curve your fingers. They gotta be flat. So we can cover the holes effectively. So some fingers to watch out for is your pinky here. That's kind of a weird grip in your left hand here. So make sure it's actually covering the hole when you're playing the other notes. Else it won't work. Ugh. So I'm trying to play that low C, but if that pinky's not there, we get that grunty noise, right? Okay, so make sure your fingers are covering. And if you think it's your fingers are the problem, play a note that just uses a couple of them. And make sure everything else is working, like your air and your reed and your embouchure and whatnot. Okay, so cover the holes. That's all there is to say. And then lastly, and leastly, that's a word, right, is your instrument. So sometimes you actually will have a problem with the instrument. The Xaphoon's pretty simple, so this is definitely way less likely than other instruments. But what you want to check for is the mouthpiece. If there's any chips, so if you dropped the thing or, you know, your kid got into it or something and chucked it across the room, it might be chipped, and then it's kind of game over if that's the case. And also, I experienced this, is my daughter had shoved a reed into the bottom of the Xaphoon. So my low notes were out of tune and stuffy, and I couldn't figure out why. And so I actually looked into it, and oh yeah, there's a reed in there, and I had to do some surgery to get it out. Now it plays normal again. So the rule is 99% of the time, if you have a problem, it's you. 1% of the time, it might be your instrument. So don't think that's the first thing that's wrong. It's like, oh, my Xaphoon's broken. It's like, no. You need to learn something new and do some practice. Like I said, 99% of the time. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and maybe I can end up in a new video about the glorious Xaphoon.